This video contains spoilers.
Hi.
So, how's NeNeiSan so far?
あらあら。
All right, let's ask the very, very expensive question.
Are H scenes necessary? Yes, this topic is always hot in the eyes of the VN community. But what do the VN YouTubers think about it? Well, some of us at least. Regardless, in this educational video, I hope that you can find something that reinforces your opinion, or perhaps even changes it entirely. Anyway, let's start, shall we?
Hello everyone, this is Ange, and I'm going to argue in favor of H-scenes being necessary. H-scenes have been a part of visual novels and eroge forever. They straight up are a widely known feature of what many people, for better or for worse, associate with the medium as a whole. It says something that when a developer attempts to remove H-scenes from a VN, they better be popular enough, or the consumer outrage may be enough for the company to be forced to re-add them, or potentially lose their business. Imagine a moige romance story, but without the H-scenes as the reward for the couple getting together. May as well just watch a harem anime at that point, since the only difference would be animation not being able to choose your romantic option. Imagine a universe where the only visual novel fans are the Ryukishi 07, Science Semicolon Adventure, and Kotaro Uchikoshi shills who brag about how their series is the most galaxy-brain comic ever. I'd get sick of those fans quickly, more than I currently am. Imagine a universe where there isn't a whole genre of visual novels made specifically for the H-scenes. This is the genre that crosses zones where even the average hentai anime and manga wouldn't come close to breaching. I, as a pure vanilla fan, would never even consider checking out what I perceive to be some of the most disgusting fetishes I've ever seen in Nukige. But the fact that these Nukige open the door for potential just brings much needed variety, but more importantly, shows who the true degenerates are in the weeb community. It says something when there's the existence of what I like to call H-scene tsunderes. These are the people who claim to not like H-scenes, always skip them, but will make it a point to still read the 18 plus version and even some H-scenes on that copium of the 5% chance that H-scenes have story relevance. When even these people are willing to read these scenes despite their supposed dislike of them, that speaks miles of how necessary they actually are. One of the arguments I could see is that H-scenes detract from story-heavy visual novels. While a good point on paper, the characters going through this drama could use some kind of sexual release to calm themselves down between moments of drama. Even the reader could use a breather of sorts between drama of these scenes, though I guess your breathing would likely be a bit heavier. The only other argument I could see is that H-scenes tend to have corny, repetitive dialogue. While understandable, if these scenes were that bad, developers would have changed this style a long time ago. I mean, in what other medium do you get to see the same sexual position for 15 to 30 minutes in a row? What medium do you get to potentially watch a couple get it on all night? What other medium do you get a full, constant play-by-play of what's happening during sex from both parties? If you're a virgin, how else are you going to get any type of detailed sex education? Your normie friends and relationships? Highly unlikely. My final and most important point. My personal opinion is that whole visual novel medium would not exist as is without those early 80s and 90s ero-heavy stories. People could argue otherwise, but sex sells, and I believe people wanting non-porn stories could have easily just gone into anime, manga, light novels, TV shows, or even just other video games. I'm surprised a handful of visual novel series and companies have been able to survive without H-scenes at all. Keep in mind these are only the top 5% of visual novel developers, so like your Keys and your Rikishi 07s. H-scenes still represent the vast majority of visual novels. H-scenes represent the middle class of the visual novel medium.
A lot of people ask this, but I think the question itself is missing the point. Eroge isn't different from other genres, it's just another medium for telling stories. And I think the fact that we're even having this discussion in the first place is proof of a general lack of quality in the games we play. I mean, do we need to be questioning if there needs to be violence in this story? Should there be a kiss scene here? Why is there a joke here? Everything should merely serve the voice of the story, and if you're able to ask whether or not it belongs, then it's not very well written. A good story doesn't tell us to react, we just do. It doesn't tell us to feel, we just do. A good story doesn't tell us to be scared, to laugh, to cry, to jerk off, because a good story makes us forget that we're experiencing a story. if an H scene doesn't belong, you should be asking yourself why you're making an eroge, and sometimes the answer is because you're making porn, and that's fine, there's nothing wrong with that. But for true men of culture like us, an eroge is simply another medium to tell a story, a way to express ideas that other stories are too cowardly to take on. We shouldn't be asking if H scenes are necessary, but where are they necessary, and when are they necessary, and why are they necessary? And if a story can answer that, then it might just be a story worth reading.
This is neither a yes nor a no answer. So, abstain, I guess.
Compared to my visual novel content creator peers, I haven't gone through that many titles as I tend to only read what I record for Let's Plays on my channel. Nevertheless, I still have gone through a fair amount of visual novels that contain H scenes, and I've come to an opinion on them. They're annoying. Straight up. Unfortunately, many story-focused titles that contain adult content, and in this case full-on H scenes, simply have them for the sake of having them. On the other hand, there are titles that use some of their H scenes and other adult content to help improve the overall product. I want to argue that H scenes have an importance in visual novels when used correctly, while also arguing that there are many H scenes that are useless filler content. I have some examples to bring in to state my point here, and we will start with Saya no Uta. I won't get into any spoilers for any of my examples here, but Saya no Uta is a bona fide freaky classic that does have some pretty crazy moments, along with some sexual ones. All H scenes here add to the gross reality of what is occurring throughout the story, sort of doubling down on the pure insanity that the main character is going through and accepting it all without batting an eye. These scenes also add to the idea that what appears to be normal steamy sex is absolutely not that, which keeps the reader thinking about the reality here. Even the one scene that felt out of place with what was happening around it actually served a purpose in showing off what was possible in this absolute batshit insane course of events. Saya no Uta is a great example where H scenes are important and necessary in all regards. Now let's jump over to Wonderful Everyday, where a main character fucks a desk. I talked about this in ASid's best H scene video, but this scene and many others are fucking ridiculous, and that's sorta good. This title covers multiple perspectives, and some of them have a twisted view on what's actually happening, just like in Saya no Uta. From this and other characters' perspectives, where reality isn't entirely fucked, H scenes are unfortunately a mixed bag. Some of them are well placed and flow with what's going on, some just keep on occurring one after the other for no reason, and others are just there for shock factor. It begins to get a bit silly at times, and it takes away from the story when you really want that pacing to keep up while trying to decipher the mystery of what the fuck is going on. I would say Wonderful Everyday is pretty 50-50 with H scenes, as some work with the story and help expand on the craziness that is this title, and others are just too disconnected, overdone, unnecessary, and/or out of line for no good reason. My final example is a recent title that I wrapped up and reviewed on my channel, and that is Amatsutsumi. This visual novel is fantastic, and the first H scene between the main character and the main heroine is so perfect for everything that comes up later on. My problem with Amatsutsumi is that so many H scenes feel forced, like a quota just had to be met for them. You could be focusing on one character through the main route due to the ladder structure that this title has, and whoops, this other character is horny. Well, we gotta deal with that real quick. It doesn't help that the H scenes in this title also feel like they last way too goddamn long, so the pacing could feel a bit weird at times. So this one is an easy fail with H scenes, and I believe Amatsutsumi could have gone without them for the most part, as the first one with the main characters that I brought up earlier and a few others are the only ones that feel like that they have any importance, with all the others feeling like they were forced in. So there we have it. I like having H scenes in my visual novels, but not when they're only there to act as second half of the original Naruto anime filler content. I'm here to read visual novels for the plot, not the plot. Throw me under the yesn't for this one, as they sometimes work out and other times don't.
Okay, Michael, let me put that yes and no for you.
I can understand why people don't like H scenes, it's completely understandable. Some of them are unnecessary, some of them are disgusting, although those depend on a few people. But in my opinion, visual novels and H scenes, they really bring out the best in a romantic relationship. Mostly in moeges though. Take for example one of my favorite visual novels of all time, Hoshiori Yume Murai. Or I guess you could say the same thing with Geniro Haruka, or If My Heart Had Wings. These ones take their time to fully get to an H scene. Why? Because it's a next step to the relationship of a romantic couple. You know, the MC, the heroine, they have to gain their trust in order to get that part of the level of the relationship. And that's what I personally like about H scenes, because it shows how strong the relationship has become to get that sort of trust between one another. And it's also their first time, doing it. So it's really special for both of them to be able to gain that trust from one another and to be able to go into that next step of the relationship. It's just really nice to see how far the relationship has become since the beginning when they first met to now where they're having sex. I think it's a really nice thing to have H scenes in visual novels because it really just shows how strong the relationship has become.
Yes!
Are H scenes necessary in visual novels? Well, my answer is no, they're not. However, they can enhance a visual novel and make it better. I've played many visual novels with H scenes and many without. Sometimes H scenes can feel out of place and don't fit within the vibe and narrative of the visual novel. Other times, a romance can feel superficial and incomplete without the H scenes to fully flesh out the relationship. However, in either instance, H scenes are not necessary. Let's take one of my favorite visual novels for example. In Making Lovers, the H scenes show that the characters have come to love each other and have grown close. The only route in which they already know each other well and are close is the sister route, which is also my least favorite by far. In the other routes, they either already somewhat knew each other back in college but not very well, such as in Karen's route, or, as in the other routes, they don't know each other at all. The H scenes in this visual novel show just how close that they have become and that they truly love each other. However, you can show something like this without the need for H scenes. One example would just be to show how much the characters have grown to know each other. Whether it's secrets that only one another knows, or just the sheer amount that they know about each other, this is one way in which you could show just how close the characters have gotten without the need for H scenes. Now, while I am saying that the H scenes in Making Lovers are not necessary, I do think that the visual novel would not be as good without them, and that they definitely enhance this visual novel due to the vibe and the nature of the story. A second way that you can get the same narrative effect that you get from H scenes is through what most other forms of media already do today, and that is through implicit adult scenes. So you start by leading up all the way to right before the explicit H scene would start, and then you jump to right when the explicit H scene would have ended, and you continue from there. You still get the implied adult content that was in there that shows just how close that they have gotten, and it shows just how much they trust and truly care for each other. But you also get the after effects of it, and you can see the emotions that they feel after it has concluded. You still get to see the characters grow closer due to doing the act without the need for the adult content in the H scene. Now, I don't judge anybody who plays visual novels just for the H scenes. If that's your reason, then more power to you. However, I think the majority of people who read visual novels do so for other reasons. Whether it's getting to pick the girl that you like and get to have a romantic relationship with them throughout the story provided in this visual novel, or whether it's for one of the amazing stories that you can find in visual novels themselves, regardless of who you choose to go for. Regardless of your personal reason for playing visual novels, H scenes are not necessary within them. There are other ways to get the same narrative benefit that you would get from an H scene.
If a visual novel without H scenes showed up at your doorstep, would you adopt it, accepting it for all its faults, and loving it, unlike its sinful father that excommunicated it, much like how the Amish excommunicate their ilk that come within 50 feet of an iPhone? Or do you slam the door shut, look in the mirror, and see that very father as yourself? It is my humble opinion that H-scenes do not a good visual novel make, yet they certainly can elevate a good visual novel into a great visual novel if done well. Much like a cherry that tops a delicious creamy sundae, cherry popping procreational activities wrap up the kiddie romance stage of the relationship and elevate it to its next step in a way that's fundamentally more real. But ignoring the unsavory market conditions that plague visual novel markets and visual novel developers who need to target the largest subset in the visual novel niche just to stay afloat, you know, the boring shit. I don't think H-scenes are necessary in visual novels, and they can in fact be detrimental if forcibly included. The best example I can think of is one of my favorite visual novels, Little Busters. Once upon a time, they released something called Little Busters Ecstasy, which was a re-release with added adult content for all of the heroines. This in of itself would be fine, but these H-scenes would go on to become known as being one of the worst in the entirety of visual novels. This wasn't Developer Key's first time doing this either. They had god-awful scenes in Canon and Air 2, which predated Little Busters. Key is an exception in how bad they are, but it's solid proof that H-scenes shouldn't be added in willy-nilly just to appease a certain audience. Oftentimes, I find H-scenes to just be unnecessary. Hot take around here. I know, they aren't going to save a bad visual novel, unless I'm horny and subsequently post-nut clarity will probably drag my opinion of the visual novel even lower, and they won't lower my opinion of a great visual novel even if the H-scenes are bad, which is how I feel about Canon and Air, going back to that example earlier. They will certainly complement a good visual novel, and as I mentioned earlier, can elevate it to a higher standard, but they shouldn't be relied upon as a selling point, despite it being a unique quirk solely of the visual novel medium. So my answer is no, but I respect them as needing to be there for a certain audience of readers. That being said, if H-scenes didn't exist, neither would Euphoria, and that might not be the worst thing in the world.
When it comes to H-scenes, I'm all for them, despite the fact that more likely than not, I usually speed read or skip them entirely at first. Of course, not forgetting to admire the often beautiful art. But sometimes the problem with H-scenes isn't their inclusion as much as it is how they are included. Depending on the visual novel outside of Nukige, expectations are set. Protag meets heroine, the two build a relationship throughout the story, and near the climax of the route, the deed is done. Regardless of the eroge genre, this typical development is a satisfying one. You expect it, and bam, good times are made. And if H-scenes aren't your thing, or aren't in the mood, they are easy to skip and you can move on. However, it's not always the case that H-scenes are purely for erotic gratification. They can be a highlight narrative moment that can show sides to an individual and relationship dynamics that can only be shown through sex. Now, I'm not an expert, but can assume that such can be used as a tool to flesh out one or the other, or both. Though it's a bit on the darker side, Full Metal Demon Muramasa does this quite well through foreshadowing an aspect of the main character that spoilers keep me from diving into. But on the more emotional side of things, you have F, a fairy tale of the two that uses a few of its H-scenes to show characters trying to move on from trauma, the troubles of relationships, or tighten a bond that one is scared will fray. More than that though, H-scenes simply portray the main relationship's progression where the two will become one. The only time where the idea of unnecessary comes to mind and where problems do arise is when they detract more than add. Oddly enough, the threesome scenes in Fate Stay Night and Sayana Uta come to mind. In both examples, the stakes are high. The characters in the middle of a life-or-death conflict. How will the plot progress, you wonder? Why, sex, of course. The former does have some story purpose, and with the latter, you could argue it's meant to show just how far the main character has fallen into degeneracy and whatnot. But both could still be written to be a bit less jarring. Though from my experience, these are just outliers, with most usually falling into the first category. If not for a deep character moment, then simply just a nice one between the main leads. You can argue the technicalities of what it means to be necessary or unnecessary in a fictional story. But for decades now, the visual novel medium accommodates and at times panders to a certain audience that likes a bit of plot with their plot. It's one of those aspects that makes visual novels a bit more unique, allowing for more variety in their content both emotionally and narratively. It's also important to note, H-scenes have been a staple. So much so, this term has completely overwritten the term sex scene when it comes to VNs. There are some circumstances where they can be deemed unnecessary, but as a whole, to maintain the identity of visual novels, the tradition, the community, I guess, I would say they are necessary. The landscape just wouldn't be the same without them.
NeNeiSan!
Hi.
Okay, maybe my answer wasn't good enough, so let me try again. I will be biased here and I don't care. Like, are you even aware of the nature of this channel? Fan service isn't something that's uncommon. You get them all the time in anime, manga, manhwa, and even light novels.
Oh, that's hot. That's hot.
So naturally, visual novels have them as well. But they're more typically direct about it due to H scenes. Now put aside the Nukige, there is already a niche genre within our visual novel niche. What I want to touch on are the normal visual novels, stories that don't focus on the sex, stories that may include sex as fan service. Heck, you might even consider these fan service as rewards. When you read a story and the MC and FMC get together, in your possible opinion, you may not need to see them bang, but as how I see it, banging seals the deal. It is literally the act of connecting the two together. In addition to sharing their feelings and uniting their hearts, they're legit joined together in holy matrimony. Hey, I don't know about you, but to me, as a regular human being, the desire to smash is genetically embedded within me. You can't get rid of it. Though of course, you can control it. And you should. Otherwise, you'll be no different than mindless monsters.
Exactly. Rules. Without them, we live with the animals.
Just like how you should control H scenes in a story. Any story. It doesn't matter. If you're a writer, you need to know when and where to put the intercourse moments in your story. And if you feel that you don't need it, then don't put it. Enough said. What? What the f? Just being genuine here. Though I won't deny, I would be very happy if there are H scenes, even if they don't contribute to the plot. Sure, I will point out if they ruin the story, but deep down, I still appreciate them. That being said, again, if they don't fit into the setting or the plot itself, then don't add them. Simple as that. In the end, H scenes are a way of storytelling. Mostly done as fan service, but can actually be written quite well. I like to imagine H scenes as my potential life partner. Yes, I love her. Yes, I want her in my life. But if she's clearly in the wrong, then I need to tell her that. I need to point it out. For her sake. I don't want her to be badly looked at by other people. And I don't want her to head towards the wrong path because I care for her. And if we do the naughty, I want it to be meaningful. Sure, we won't be smashing all the time, but when we do, I want it to matter, to be cherished. That's one analogy I would use for my opinion towards H scenes. And that's all I gotta say for now. I'm gonna get hate comments from both sides, aren't I? In conclusion, they are not a necessity, but they damn well deserve your attention. Anyway, that's all from us. Huge thanks to the VNTuber friends that joined in this video for the sake of education. They spent some of their valuable time to give you their input, and I appreciate that. So please do go check their channels linked down below. I hope you guys enjoyed this NNN video and wish you guys a happy November. Keep on the grind, stay strong, and later degens.